All right. Welcome to the Ultra High Net Worth Clients Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Broadhead. We started this podcast as a way to create a central resource of the best financial advisor practice growing tips shared by the most outstanding advisors in the industry, of which our guest today is definitely one. These outstanding financial advisors agree to be on the show and provide a ton of value for free, all in the hopes that our audience might learn from their words. My father was an advisor, and advisors are the main client we serve, so my marketing agency's mission is to help every advisor grow their business in an effort to help the world become more financially secure. Today, we have the rare pleasure of talking with an incredible financial advisor, Mark Scribner. Mark, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
57 and heading into the 30th year in this interesting and exciting profession. Um, I think my career has been evenly split in the industry between what most folks would consider a wirehouse, the Wall Street type firms, and then evenly split with independent registered investment advisory arrangements, more on the fiduciary side. This is where I sit today.
hmm Awesome. So why leave the wirehouse and go independent?
Um, yeah, it's been an evolution, mostly kind of dictated by client needs and concerns. In the early part of my career, it was very unusual. I was an independent advisor for I think about 10 years. And what I was starting to run up against at the time when interest rates were really, really low, affluent, higher net worth folks understand that access to capital or inexpensive access to capital is important. And at the time, the independent arena hadn't really solved for um, things like S block and leveraging portfolios to buy businesses or for tax planning and things like that. Um, so the banks in some of the wirehouse firms were really well ahead of the curve there, being a bank, so they could kind of have it all in one particular universe. And my clients were asking or demanding those kinds of services. So it was an evolution of what was maturing with my client base to have more resources, to have those types of solutions available. Um, and so that's really was the impetus at the time is I was very good at working with families that had 500 to $750,000 or more. But I wasn't very good candidly at managing those 5, 10, 20 million because I didn't have the resources to really do a great job. So that played out. And then after a while, you kind of realize that you lose some optionality and flexibility having a big brand behind you. Those firms regulate and run their business plan for the masses. So there's not a lot of like customization that can be done for obvious reasons because, they're trying to manage 10, 20,000 advisor workforces and they make decisions for everybody and they don't really allow like one-off things. Like, for example, I really loved being on national TV and the financial education around that to educate consumers about financial planning tips and different things that were going on in the world. And the firm emphatically wanted me to do something like that, but they couldn't let me do it because if they gave me that ability, then everyone would ask for it. So it's just like a hard no there. Um, and then over time, I started to realize early in my career that people were coming to me because of the name of my firm. They were coming to me to work with me because of my expertise and my personality. um, so the branding became less relevant to me, and to my clients. So that at that point, I started to really crave kind of the entrepreneurial side of being an independent and being able to create a lot of solutions and services for clients based on what I was hearing them tell me they wanted. And that could be technology, that could be anything. Um, but I wanted to, and I always continue to learn in this profession, but I listen to my clients a lot and, they're the only reason that I'm successful, for the large part. And I want to, have them had a seat at the table to tell me what they're interested in and what things could make their life easier. So, that's a lot more. easy to do in the RAA independent side, just because for the most part everything is a la carte. So it's not one size fits all there. We can take what our clients want, and there's different ways to run practices. There's just client bases, and um, being on the side that I'm at now, I can decide what I want, what I don't want, what the clients are asking for, or what they don't want to have to pay for, and have like a big blanket.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and we've heard similar sentiment from previous guests, so that's great. Just trying to find the situation where you can best serve your clients. That's amazing. So I'd like to take a step back, and I'm curious, how did you get involved in this industry to start?
Yeah, that's a really funny story. My dad, and we have something in common, was also a financial advisor.
Oh, cool.
Um, so in the summers, in between school, high school, college, I would go visit him and at his firm. It was Dean Witter at the time. Now is Morgan Stanley. I got exposed to the industry, just being an intern and listening to all the advisors and what they were doing and the excitement around that. It was in the early '80s when there was this big frenzy to be a stockbroker. That was the term that we all kind of wanted to achieve.
Hmm.
Just the energy and the activity around that was really interesting to me. Um, so I tried to get into the firm, and this one particular person, his name is Bob, and I'll never forget him because it always sits on my shoulder somewhere. And it's part of what I'm gonna do a selfless plug here. I had this book come out that talks about Bob a little bit. Um, this was a gentleman that was a seasoned stockbroker, manager of a big firm here in Boston, and I did an interview. I did math tests. I did all the different things that they had, and I didn't score, in his opinion, the way that he wanted. I did not come from um, an affluent family. I didn't have a pedigree. I wasn't a Ivy League educated person, which they put a high premium on that kind of stuff at the time. So this really nice gentleman came back to me knowing that I was referred by my father. He had no control over that at that point. And he sat me down, at 28 State Street here in Boston in a corner office, and very nicely said, "Hey, Mark, some people in life should accept their fate. It's okay being a plumber or an electrician. I don't think you're cut out for this industry." Um, and that was really it. And I was pissed. Really, at the end of the day, I was like, if you tell me no, I can turn it to on. Like, that's just not the way I'm wired to be told I can't do something. Um, so I took a step back and tried to strategize. And I got a job at a lesser marquee type of firm. And very quickly I rose. I worked my tail off. Back in the day, we used to dial for dollars, and I didn't have a client base. I looked like I was 15 years old, and I was talking to 60-year-old people, and I had
Hmm.
fake eyeglasses because I looked so young. Um, but I think about maybe 2 years later, I came back I got recruited by that firm, and I just happened to remember that that guy was there. And, I came in and reminded him of the story. He didn't remember it because that was his stick. And maybe about Probably, I'd say maybe about another 2 years later, I took his office, the corner office. If you know the Wall Street firms, it's all about the carrot that they give you, which is the corner office guy, that around the suites, the nice offices. And
Hmm.
we were so shallow and materialistic back in the day. We were like, I want the office, right? So I moved him out of his office. And so that was kind of really how I started in the industry. It was really just grinding and not knowing what I was doing and how I wanted to do it. But I always surrounded myself with people that I identified as having high values, high morals, and had really good work ethic. And that's what I always have gravitated towards is the people
Hmm.
that are not the word salad type of people, but they're doers. They walk down the street and they have nothing to regret. They do the right thing for people. And I've had great mentors and I've always sought out like really exceptional people. And I still continue to do it to this day because I feel like this industry is you're never done learning. Technology changes, the world changes. It's the ultimate personal growth profession. It's a very hard profession if you can get to that point where you actually survive. In my training class, I remember there was about 2,000 of us, and I think maybe there's only two of us that are left after 30 years. Um, so unless you come from a situation where you're inheriting a practice or a firm from someone, it's tough. It's tough to survive over a long period of time. And
Mhm.
I still to this day love the profession um, because it's all relationship based, and we in our seat have a huge impact on helping people achieve their dreams, and we get to be almost like a lay rabbi, a priest, a psychologist, a divorce counselor. Um, about 90% of my time is spent on those subsets. Um, Only
Mhm.
10% is being an expert money manager, which I think I'm really good at, but it really is all around relationships and getting to know people and listening to them and asking questions the right way, and learning because we're dealing with people and there's no cookie cutter stuff, unfortunately, that can be done because everyone's different in terms of what they bring to the table, what they want to do, their education, sometimes their lack of capital market knowledge, but we're entrusted with their future. And my job is to always stay ahead of things that they're potentially facing, and then trying to pull that all together in a very complicated way, and trying to make it simple for people to consume and understand.
Mhm. That's that's amazing, Mark. I am cut from the same cloth, though. Not nearly as impressively accomplished as yourself. But yeah, if someone tells me you can't do something, like that's gonna happen. So, Mark, to you, I say you cannot cure cancer and bring about world peace.
I still think I can. I raised over $1 million for a local hospital here. Yeah, it's true, but I think when you give up on those big reaching dreams, like where would Elon Musk be right now if he didn't think,
Hmm.
you know, at least the way things are being done can't be done better. And, that one example, like I have had many, like everyone, friends and family be impacted by that. But for me, it's just not about building a business. It's important, but I also want to be a good human and try to leave the world a little bit better. And I have a skill set of like being able to mobilize and energize people to do things different. And clearly I know how to bring in assets. So I take some of those tools and try to apply it to good causes and things that are important to me.
Hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. Definitely want to dig into that later in the show. So, my dad's name is Bob. So,
Is his
I
last
was
name
like, "Oh,
Hokum? Because
crap."
this guy's no longer alive. So as long as he's not Hokum, then we're in good shape.
No, no, Bob Broadhead. But yeah, phew. Um, awesome. Well, that's I love that story. I love overcoming the odds and proving people wrong. It sounds like that really lit a fire underneath you. Obviously, um, you need that motivation. But how did you get traction, and how did you get so much traction that you were actually able to get that coveted corner office?
I learned really, really early on that mostly from meeting with different types of clients and the different personalities, that I've learned, and I still believe this to this day, is you have to be in areas that you have some commonality with people. some people will call it passion prospecting. Um, this job is very, very tough. It's very draining emotionally and economically in the early years. But one of my mentors, the persons that I sought out, who was very successful, sat me down and said, "You want to be around. You want work to not feel like work." Is basically the short answer. And so, in this particular case, this person loved flying and got his pilot's license, and that was his passion. So when you look at like building a business, you want to be congruent. You can't fake who you are. Like if you're going to an event that you have no interest in, or even like the kinds of things that people are doing, and you just go there because you feel like there's a pocket of money to work with, um, there's not gonna be any traction. It's gonna feel like work too, and it's just
Mm,
not gonna
yeah.
work. So, I just found things that I really like to do and where those people kind of congregate, um, with the idea that they would be people that I could help, and they could utilize the things that I was doing. So, some of those passions don't correlate into being able to build a business, but I early on learned that I work really well with certain types of people. Mostly for me, it's mostly entrepreneurs that have a similar mindset, and they're that turn the no to the on type of approach, and they're taking risk in their lives, and they're just haywire, not organized, and they have no way to figure out how they're going to exit out of what they're doing that they're building. Um, so I found that niche really early on because I really enjoyed, um, talking to young founders and trying to help them execute. And not all of it was beneficial to me. Most of it really wasn't. But I became a resource and an asset to various groups, and became a thought leader there, and put time into it. And it's just something that I enjoy doing. Um, but it was really easy to scale because I didn't feel like I was working. You know, it was something when I was spending time on my day, there were people that I really embraced, and we would both celebrate each other's success together.
Mhm. That's awesome. How did you go about discovering this, niche, that you enjoyed serving and could, serve at a very high level? These entrepreneurs.
Um, you know, it, Early on, it was just kind of looking at what were the commonalities of the people that I was attracting. I think one of the things I learned at being in a wirehouse, and I still tell this to some young advisors all the time, is you can tell normally what kind of clients an advisor has by the personality of the client. Did I say that the right way? You can tell what the clients look like based very similar to what the advisor looks like, right?
Mhm.
So, I think where I started is I just went back. I mean, I had already amassed a good number of clients, but I could see themes everywhere. I didn't really know to look for it in the beginning, but I did fairly fast. I could see certain professions and certain hobbies that people had, and certain things that they did, and just going back in time and recalling a lot of those conversations. And so I'm like, all right, well, here's a pocket of a lot of people that I'm talking to that I really hit it off with, that I really like what they do and how they're doing it.
Mhm.
And then from there, it's like, okay, where do these people congregate? How can I be positioned in a way that when they have these questions, that they'll know that Mark's a guy that is known in that space. And I tried not to. In the beginning, I did too many of them, and then I realized that I was less meaningful to a lot of people. So I kind of honed that down to a smaller subset to be able to, really invest in financially, emotionally, and not be fragmented all over the place. So it took a while, and it evolves over time too, as you kind of mature in the industry. You develop a higher skill set, based on your education and your training and your exposure to new concepts. Um, it doesn't change dramatically for me, but it lets me be more focused of where I want to be and where I should be.
Mhm. Okay, awesome. So the primary way of finding and building relationships with these entrepreneurs, it was a lot of going to events. Am I understanding
No,
correctly?
no. So I mean, you can see my LinkedIn profile. And I won't get in trouble for saying, but I was a Morgan Stanley advisor.
Mhm,
And I had learned early on being an independent because the compliance um, marketing stuff is a lot more flexible than it is in a Wall Street firm. And when I got to the firm, I was really surprised that they really didn't have any marketing that we could do, that we could control. It
mhm,
was sponsor a golf tournament, put an ad on, the weekend, and that was their marketing, right? Um, so they had come to me because I had a big social media. I got into social media very early in the game, probably 25 or so years ago. Morgan Stanley made me their first financial advisor to be able to use LinkedIn. Maybe there was two or three other, but I got a lot of press on that. The Wall Street Journal was like, "Holy crap! Like Morgan Stanley's coming into the Times, and they're letting their advisors be out there." And I had to do media training and stuff like that. But I quickly realized that the return on investment to find those passions that I had and figure out where these people aggregate was on steroids. I, have been trying to go look at the local kind of news calendars and see, what's out there. And I would talk to the clients, like, where do you guys hang out? Like, where do you do? Um, but the beauty of social media is really you can search and find these people wherever they live. And that was like a scalable moment for me where I realized like if I could um search them and find them and think about it, then it was a lot easier to try to get myself in those places and become a subject matter expert. So that was really the genesis, and that's always been a big part of what we do. Is how do you find people that need help, and what's the easiest way for them to get what they need to make decisions and to know that there's resources out there.
mhm. Okay, wow. Um, so your strategy, in the beginning or maybe some version of it still today, you would find ideal clients on, LinkedIn or somewhere on the internet. I mean, I don't think
All
LinkedIn
the
came out till 2005, maybe 2004,
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah, that's right. It was about
S
that time.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, no, it's evolved more to that, but it's obviously that's one component. I look at the way we at least market is like a stool. A stool will have four legs. It's sturdy if it has four legs. So I always have four things in my mind, in my delivery that we always have going on. And some of those are social media. A lot of it now is client experience or assembling, especially coming out of COVID. It's kind of seems to be well received now. But in the early days, I would do seminars and I would do education events. I would do anything. I mean, the old the old saying is nothing works and everything works um, is really the way I always approach it because a lot of it is trial and error, and it's just finding that kind of approach that works, and it works sometimes for a long time. Sometimes it's a flash in the pan, and you just have to always kind of fine tune that piece to um, to adapt because platforms, now we're not doing it, but you see things like TikTok for the younger generation. That's like these TikTok viral videos on financial planning tips or personal finance. Instagram, LinkedIn's become um, kind of a spam kind of a category in a lot of ways, and it's kind of getting tuned out a little bit. Um, so those things change, and you just have to be able to stay relevant and always search for, trying to find people where they want to meet. And, LinkedIn's been, a pretty consistent type of thing because people do associate it with business conversations and topics. They're not talking generally about, you know, edgy things, the politics or their dogs and whatever. Not that dogs are edgy, um, but you just have to adapt over time. And as we come into AI, um, it's another change for us all in our industry. Like, how do we leverage those tools for whether it be communication, whether it be for education, service, portfolio management? I mean, there's a lot of change, and change is constant. And I've always been a big fan of change, and I spend a lot of time trying to figure out what those changes are. I have a really good friend that owns TEDx, MIT, TEDx Boston, and I get to go to meetings and I meet with technologists and scientists, and that is helpful for me from the marketing perspective. But I also see investment trends somewhat early in a lot of ways. Um, and you just think about some of the companies, like the internet was basically invented there, and switching and AI is huge there right now. And so I get to meet with entrepreneurs regularly that are starting companies. And I will find things in those meetings that I can take back to my practice and to my clients that will make their lives a little better, hopefully. So it's just trying to stay relevant as much as I can. And I very much adopt this mentality of failing forward. Um, in that, I don't try to be perfect with any of this, I love to learn and I love to bring, new things to my clients is really the exciting part of what I get to do.
Mhm. Awesome. Awesome. So I'm sure a lot of advisors, nowadays are leveraging LinkedIn to, find and research their, prospects in their niche. Um, do you have any specific strategies you have found to be effective to reach out and get them to speak to you?
Yeah. Um, You know, I think well, I'm a big fan of automation. So when I have a direction that I want to explore or test, um, I I think when you look at marketing, if it becomes like a chore, you tend not to do it. And so,
Mhm.
um, for example, there's very easy ways on LinkedIn to plug in Sales Navigator and some bots where you're able to deliver messages and communication at a very big scale versus, going in LinkedIn every day and having to, cut and paste and do something. And it just doesn't sound good. Um, so, um, what I normally will do is when I find that niche or a message, like right now, there's things around the election and there's some things about changes in the tax laws or whatever is important that people might not be aware of. I spend a lot of time making sure that I'm making a message that's easy to understand and a reason for people to click yes or want to know more. And experiment with that all the time. And it's just about communication and trying to get the message to the right people, and then fine tuning it over time. And so, very much what I try to do from a scale perspective is I don't have the time to do a lot of this stuff, but I have a team that they know I try to automate as much as I can um, to cover a much wider universe. And in my role now, I'm the rainmaker to a large degree. So I train my team and the younger advisors to learn how to grow and scale and build a name for themselves in the industry by automating things and I'll take a class on neuralistic programming and speech and like how do I get a message across the right way. And there's a lot of tools and education you learn, but I'll find someone in a marketing that outside of our industry because I think other industries do it a heck of a lot better than we do. And there's a reason that Amazon scaled so long is because it's very easy to do business with them. The communication is very good. They've been, technology companies have figured it out. The financial services industry is so far behind, really big scalable companies. And so I view the technology leaders out there. They're doing some great things, and I try to take what's good there and just bring it back into the practice.
Mhm. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, you're in Boston, so there's, just an insane amount of innovation happening there. I mean, arguably, you know, in line with San Francisco, just because you guys have so much just big brains over there. Um,
Yeah, I think it's I've heard someone say it's like Silicon Valley 2.0. What also is different about Boston is two other things. There's a very big presence in which is a huge growth area now for obvious reasons. Biotech. So
mm,
big, huge companies, a lot of that's tied a lot into the university system. So you have academia, you have technology, you just have a lot of cool things that kind of intersect all the time. So there's no shortage of inspiration around here. And there's really cool companies that are being developed and have been launched out of Boston. You think about the Zuckerbergs and the Harvards and the Gates and all
mhm,
those guys in the early days. That still is the culture here in Massachusetts is innovation and technology and all those other things.
mhm. Awesome, awesome. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think you are so close to, so many bringers of innovation. Are there any exciting trends or things on your radar that you're willing to share?
Just AI, just trying to be ahead of that is, I was at Fidelity a couple months ago, and I saw their innovation lab of some of the stuff they're bringing out, and it's going to change the industry in a lot of ways. And I think that's a threat, but it's also an opportunity. And so, just trying to wrap my brain around that. There are some firms with big capex spending that are making those investments and seeing the returns already. I just think it's gonna, from what I understand, I think it's exponentially, um, it's coming, it's here, it's been here for a while, but the since ChatGPT, really came out, it's really gotten into the hands of like CEOs, the people that run these firms, and they understand the capabilities. And so just trying to stay, ahead of that and making sure I don't become obsolete, but also what tools are there to make clients' lives easier. And that's I just this book that I just wrote was really a combination of exactly what we just talked about, hanging out at MIT, hanging out at biotech, being in financial services and capital markets is um, ultimately where an advisor is the most successful or any business has a long track record is when they can achieve parity. So, not every transaction can always be 50-50, but when it gets out of skew, 70-30 or whatever, that's when people don't feel like they're getting the value that they deserve. So my guess is that AI is going to go a long way to take those bumpy parts where you're not getting equilibrium together. Um, and it's going to allow relationships to have a longer lifespan, um, because people aren't going to be able to or even want to say that they're getting not that 50-50 parity on both sides of that transaction. Advisors or clients, there has to be value there. In the absence of value, um, it's expensive. That's where price is determined. If there's, determined by value. If there's no value, like someone's going to pay you 1% or whatever you charge. If you're not getting something substantial above that, then there's no value for a client. Like they shouldn't pay for not getting, good results. Um,
Mhm.
and so I feel like AI is going to go a long way to improving that from a transparency, education, fee perspective, cost, et cetera, the cost of managing portfolios, all that is coming into parity very, very fast at a level I don't think myself or any of us can really fully appreciate. But I've seen it in other industries already. And Morgan Stanley, for example, has already plugged it into their advisor universe with their partnership with Microsoft and OpenAI. Um, State Street's doing the same thing. They have a complete data set from all their shareholder services and all their ETFs and things like that. So, it's kind of the haves and the have-nots here, but I think a lot of these firms are going to become more technology firms than they are kind of brick and mortar banks and things like that. But the technology and the data that out there for all of us that we're supplying to these vendors um, is being harnessed in a maybe a bad way in a lot of ways. But um, I see the benefits from like behavioral finance and anticipating people's needs and bringing solutions to them before they even know that they exist.
Awesome. That sounds like it's also very interesting and fun for you. So that's just a total win-win there. That's awesome. Mark, well, I mean, I could just ask you questions about trends and cool entrepreneur and technology stuff for the rest of the afternoon, but I will respect your time. And thank you again so much for coming on the show. My final question for you, and please also tell us about your book. My final question is an open-ended question. You can take it in any direction that you like. And the question is, what are you working towards?
Um, Generation two. Been doing this for a long time and building building the bench much deeper is always the task. When you sit in the seat that I have for almost 30 years, I am now into starting in my 20s. My clients were in their 60s, most of them, 50s or whatnot. But now I'm working with their their children and their grandchildren. Um, so one of the responsibilities that I have is, since I have millions and millions of people's money, um, is if I get hit by a bus, like I have to make sure that this is beyond, my career, that I
Mm,
have, the right resources behind me to make sure that if something happens to me, that it's not disruptive to my clients. So having, that expertise, it's really hard when you've built a really successful business, um, to explain to clients that, having someone else on the call doesn't mean I've gone away, but, I need them to start to get to know these families. So in the event that I retire or, something happens to me, that it's not gonna be like a disruptive because we know so much about these families and what they're trying to do. We don't wanna have them have to explain this whole thing and the amount of work that's been put together to get, these families where they wanna be, it would be very disruptive. So that's really where a lot of my time is now, is just building out the team and making sure we have the right resources for what's going on in their world. And that's a long kind of a couple year type of process, but I have the right people now. Um, and just trying to build them out a little bit more and make sure they have what they need to be successful and competent and things like that.
mhm. That's awesome. That's awesome. Great. Well,
All right, let
Mark,
me give
this
you the
was
book though. So I'm going
yeah,
to give
yeah.
you one on this. Just this was all this the proceeds of go to a charity. So
Oh,
but
awesome.
this is a gentleman that I've been following for a long time. His name's Christopher Voss. He wrote the book Never Split the
Never split the
Difference.
difference. Yeah.
And so he is
Big fan.
his concept is tactical empathy. Um And so a lot of the stuff is around my experience and in the industry, but also too it's how to communicate with people is really the hardest part of this profession. Is uh finding a way to make people do things that they should do, but they don't want to do sometimes in a tactical way, without being manipulative and self agenda. But having that tactical empathy approach and asking questions around, more feelings and instead of numbers and cents sometimes is like, where do you want to go? Those kinds of conversations. I always gravitated toward Chris and how he was able to pull that off. And I was fortunate to be invited to be a collaborator in a book with 12 other people, and it was primarily for me. I wanted to understand. This is kind of the example. I wanted to understand how that industry worked. So the only way to do it is to pay to get there. But it was something I was very interested in, how the book industry works and all the different pieces that go into pulling off a successful bestseller book.
Mhm. Awesome. Awesome. And where can my audience find out more about you and your book?
On Amazon, it's called Influence Impact. You can buy it; it's super cheap. And again, all the proceeds go to charity.
Awesome.
LinkedIn, put a lot of content across all the socials, always. But you just Google me. I'm there.
Mhm. Awesome. We'll be sure to link to all that in the show notes. Mark, thank you so much for taking the time, man. This was awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. And to all our listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in and keep on growing out there, everybody. See